Join Matthew Perry as he experiences the highs and lows of his tumultuous and chaotic life. Although you might know me by another name, my name is Matthew. They refer to me as Matty. I ought to be dead by now. It is the year 2018. Matthew Perry opens his eyes gradually in the UCLA medical facility. He looks to his mother, who is seated next to his hospital bed, feeling confused and afraid. She says, "Your colon exploded." He receives the complete account over the following few days. His hurried, pain-induced dash from his sober living facility to the closest hospital. The 7-hour colon surgery to repair the damage. The doctors gave him a 2% chance of surviving. And his loved ones and companions who remained by his side throughout the 2-week coma. He must face his darkest dread as he slowly recovers, weeping, in pain, and linked to a colostomy bag. This was his fault. He caused himself this. What led to this? How did a charming, gifted actor who rose to fame portraying Chandler Bing in one of television's most enduring sitcoms go so far? You may read the entire account in this book's summary for Matthew Perry's memoir, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Awful Thing. He holds nothing back, discussing everything from his terrible upbringing to his battles with drugs and the sad results of his celebrity. Matthew Perry's turbulent upbringing set him on an unpleasant course. Matthew Langford Perry was born screaming on a stormy Tuesday night in 1969, one day after Woodstock ended and a month after the moon landing. His folk singer parents and former beauty queen mother were swiftly driven insane by their colicky child. They took the infant to the doctor out of concern and overload due to the frequent sobbing. It was because of this that 2-month-old Matthew Perry, who was at a developmental risk, received a prescription for the powerful barbiturate phenobarbital. The tears naturally ceased, but this would only be the first of many instances where Matthew's issue was solved with a drug rather than by learning to perform the inside work. Matthew's parents divorced when he was 9 months old, leaving him with his mother, who was then 21 years old, while his father pursued his ambition to become an actor in California. As Matthew became older, he discovered how to take care of others while also trying to make them laugh. He discovered himself vying for his mother's attention, who was kept busy in her role as Pierre Trudeau's press secretary. The behavior issues started when Matthew started to feel like he didn't belong in the family when his mother had a second child. Due to the fact that he smoked and got into fights, he had issues in school. At one point, he even assaulted Justin Trudeau, the future prime leader, who was the son of his mother's boss. Yet his first drink didn't happen until he was 14 years old, one of the most important moments of his early life. Brothers Chris and Brian Murray, 2 of his pals, were also present. For whatever reason, they chose to get drunk even though no one was home. They grabbed a 6-pack of beer and a bottle of wine, and they consumed it all in Matthew's garden in under 15 minutes. Naturally, the brothers started throwing up. Matthew, though, had a unique encounter. Something changed as soon as he simply laid on his back in the grass and gazed at the moon. For the first time in his life, he understood that everything was fine. All of his issues had been resolved, the universe made sense, and he was happier than ever. The germ for what he refers to as the great awful thing, or alcoholism and addiction, was planted in that instant, even though regular heavy drinking did not start as a result of this realization. Because of his anhedonia, Matthew Perry is only able to enjoy things that are thrilling. Or he's drunked. Yet, all of this will happen later. Matthew, who is 15 years old, is irate, arguing with his mother, and feeling alone in Canada. He makes the decision to relocate to Los Angeles in order to see his father and see if Hollywood can help him fill the huge void inside of him. Seeking fame and money in Los Angeles. Every evening, Matthew Perry's father would get home from his day on set, pour himself a strong vodka tonic, and say, "This is the nicest thing that's happened to me all day." The young guy would pick up this mentality while growing up in Los Angeles. Matthew was learning how to act while his father was teaching him how to drink, and it turned out he was rather skilled at doing so. He had received a couple minor parts by 1986, but nothing significant. He later won over a filmmaker after he caught him making out with women at a Hollywood diner and was then asked to appear in the movie A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon. Despite the failure of the film, Matthew and River Phoenix remained close. In his romantic life, a pattern was also starting to emerge. Quick-witted and charismatic, Matthew readily drew women to him and had sex with many of them. Yet every time he felt like he was getting near to what would be considered a serious relationship, he would break it off. He believed that if anyone came close enough to see the real him, they would leave because of his ongoing sentiments of worthlessness. He would thus depart first. Gradually, Matthew became fixated on celebrity. He felt like there was a hole inside of him that fame would fill. Yet he filled that emptiness with alcohol because he wasn't yet well known. Every evening, he would drink. He was a heavy drinker. He was also drinking in private and by himself. His closest companion and source of comfort was alcohol. He was 24 at the time. Matthew could feel his chance at fame slipping away because of his lack of money and the fact that he missed half his auditions. He pleaded with his management to get him a part in anything, and as a result, he wound up in the forgettable sci-fi comedy LAX 2194, which is about airport luggage handlers in the near future. At this time, Hollywood started to take notice of the script for the television series Friends Like Us. When Matthew read it, he connected with one character in particular. He considered himself to be Chandler Bing. He was unable to audition because of his loyalty to LAX 2194, and his friend Craig Bierko was given the role of Chandler instead. Fortunately, Craig declined the part, and the baggage handler show was not picked up for a second season. Matthew had his chance at glory since the stars were in his favor. Matthew Perry, who was living alone in a small flat on the 10th floor, knelt down and closed his eyes out of desperation. He prayed, "God, you are free to treat me any way you wish. Please, just make me famous." After 3 weeks, the final actor for the comedy Friends had been cast, Matthew Perry as Chandler Bing. Nobody explains the realities of life to you. James Burrows, the director of Friends, handed each of the upcoming stars $100 just before the show's pilot aired. He advised them to go gambling and enjoy themselves because they would soon no longer be able to do so in public. He was correct, too. The actors' on-screen connection was instantaneous for all of them, and Friends became a huge smash due to its 8:30 p.m. time slot between Crazy About You and Seinfeld. Matt Perry was content. He was resolved not to blow his opportunity because he was aware of how fortunate he was. Anyone could propose a joke, and if it was humorous enough, it would be used in the open and creative environment that permeated the set. The most pitches were made by Matthew, both for himself and the other characters. Fans grew to love Chandler's character very quickly. Julia Roberts agreed to appear as a guest star in Season 2 on the condition that she may take part in Chandler's plot. Due to this, Julia and Matthew had a protracted romance over facts that ended in a brief relationship. As with all of his relationships, Matthew stopped this one out of fear that she would inevitably leave him first, not because things were going terribly. Matthew continued to battle addiction throughout these years. He kept it a secret and abstained from alcohol while filming, but he soon discovered that celebrity wasn't doing what he had hoped it would. For that, he still required alcohol. The situation then started to get worse. Matthew started working on Fool's Rush in after the second season of Friends had wrapped up filming. After shooting one day, he chose to ride a jet ski that was accessible on a neighboring lake, disregarding safety instructions. Matthew was in a lot of agony after unavoidably falling off and being saved by the film team. He was given one Vicodin pill by a doctor, who assured him that everything would be all right. On his way home after taking the pill, everything started to click. Everything was ideal and everything made sense, just as when he had his first drink when he was 14 years old. He was taking 55 of those tablets every day an additional year and a half afterwards. At the age of 26, this resulted in the first of numerous detoxes in treatment. Yet, it didn't last, and drinking and drug use only became worse. He adhered to his rule of never bringing anything onto the set, yet he always arrived at Friends' set with a severe hangover. He once needed Matt LeBlanc's nudge to wake him up. He didn't get his act together until he was 30 years old and developed pancreatitis. Concern among the other cast members grew, and Jennifer Aniston even organized a tiny intervention in his trailer. There was a problem, and it was getting worse. The characters Monica and Chandler were married in May 2001. One of the most recognizable scenes from the entire production it was. At the time, Matthew Perry was receiving treatment. After Friends, Life. Monica is the first character to set her apartment key down on the empty counter, followed by Chandler, Joey, Ross, Rachel, and Phoebe. Chandler answers with the ideal amount of comedic timing when Rachel proposes grabbing one last cup of coffee. Fine, where? Matthew Perry had particularly wanted to have the final word on the episode. The camera pans to the rear of the apartment door as Embryonic Journey by Jefferson Airplane begins to play, and the assistant director exclaims, "That's a wrap," for the final time. Friends has concluded after 237 episodes. Everyone in the cast is sobbing, but Matthew Perry is holding it together. Matthew has no feelings, which might be because he's taking buprenorphine as part of his most recent detox or because he's simply not alive. What will happen to me now? Is a concern he has as he moves around the set, thinking back on this enjoyable, creative profession that had served as a home for the previous 10 years. As Matthew got to this point, he started drinking and using drugs to try to forget how much he was doing it. He was never suicidal, but he was ready to pass away if the drugs he needed caused him to do so. But despite everything, Matthew was profoundly alone. Before she could get to know him well enough to break up with him first, he had just broken up with another girlfriend. He avoided the risk of an emotional connection and went back to a life of one-night relationships and friends with benefits. At some point, Matthew discovered himself in Sunny Valley, Utah's Cirque Lodge, a rehab facility. He met a counselor named Burton in this beautifully situated and well-staffed facility, and Burton helped him see things from a different angle. Burton alleged that Matthew took pleasure in his addiction's drama and disruption. This was confirmed to be true by Matthew. He kept returning to drugs even though they weren't giving him what he needed to escape from what? His dependency on booze. It was a pointless and terrible loop, and something had to be done to break it. He left Cirque Lodge in good health and a good mood. Although his drug usage issues will still persist after the colon ruptured in 2018, he now had a different perspective on life. He wanted to use his activism to fill the void inside of him, doing all he could to assist those struggling with addiction. He even converted his own Malibu home into a haven for addicts to recover after leaving rehab. He put $500,000 into a company that built sober living homes in Los Angeles. With his public relations job, he promoted drug courts, which decriminalize nonviolent addicts and offer them care and therapy rather than jail time. "Reality is an acquired taste," a therapist once said to Matthew. Matthew Perry was finally beginning to grasp reality after 15 stints in rehab, countless AA meetings and counseling sessions, and over $7 million spent on his attempt to get sober. How is Matthew Perry doing these days? He is 52 years old at the time of writing his memoir. He doesn't use drugs, alcohol, or even tobacco anymore, but he still bears the scars and regrets of the life he's had. He is haunted by all the relationships he unjustly ruined because he was afraid in a way that took him a long time to comprehend. He yearns for a loving partner and children. Yet as the morning fog lifts from his head and he is able to appreciate the stunning view from his California home overlooking the ocean, he is overcome with thankfulness. Even though he knows he shouldn't be, he is thankful to still be alive. He is appreciative of his devoted family, who stood by him throughout his worst moments. He is appreciative of the cast of Friends and the amazing performers he worked with. He is also appreciative of all the sober friends, sponsors, and medical professionals that kept him alive and helped him avoid squandering the fantastic opportunity he was given. He no longer has to worry about relapsing because he has a loving and caring support system all around him. He has a taste for life at last, and he is eager to see what is ahead. The great horrible thing, addiction, can be overcome. It takes a lot of support and one day at a time, but it is possible. Matthew Perry is still alive because he never gave up. He wants you to understand that anyone can do what he has.